Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Friday show, the last show of the week. I wasn't even going to post a show, but then I created a show. I was so happy that I got to sit down with Sergeant Aquilino Gonell for the first time. We've been talking off there. I met him last year at Glenn Kirshner's subscriber event in Washington, D.C. with the great Karen Madison, who I hope is listening. And then she disappeared, and I kept hanging out with Sergeant Gonell and Harry Dunn and Mike Fanone and other Capitol Police officers that were at this event. Anyway, we connected there. We kept talking, and I finally cornered him and got him to sit down for an interview. Really excited to share this interview. We talked for over an hour. In case you don't know who he is, he's one of the hero Capitol Police officers who was injured so severely that he was forced to retire last December after he testified in front of Capitol Hill in front of the January 6th committee. And, of course, he's got a new book coming out as well. That'll be out in October, which is really interesting, kind of a memoir about his life. I don't think you can pre-order it yet, but as soon as it's out, I'll have him back and we'll promote it for sure. Also, I have invited him to next Thursday's Hangout, and I'm going to promote that he's going to join us at our subscriber-only Hangout. So hopefully you can join us, and hopefully he will be there as well to talk more about his life and about his experience as a Capitol. He also was, I should mention, an infantryman in the United States Army and did a tour in Iraq. He's a combat veteran as well. Grew up in the Dominican Republic, moved to Brooklyn when he was 12 years old. We talk about his life. We talk about January 6th. We talk about accountability. We bust Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn's balls. And it's really all good. I love this conversation. I think you're going to love it. I hope that you let him know that you heard it. He is really active on Twitter. If that's a thing that you do, you can find him at Sergeant AQGOs, at Sergeant AQGO. And I'm really excited to get his new book, American Shield, The Immigrant Sergeant Who Defended Democracy, comes out at the end of this year. So, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time on Stand Up, retired Staff Sergeant Gonell, Aquilino Gonell, right now. All right, there he is. I've got him, and I couldn't be more excited and honored and grateful that you agreed to talk to me, sir. Thank you very, very much for joining me. It was great to meet you last year. It's great to have these conversations we've had off air, and I'm really psyched to be able to tape one with you. And thank you.
Thanks for having me, Pete.
I'm very excited to want to mention up front, you have now written a book that's going to come out when?
November 17. It's called American Shield, the Immigrant Sergeant Who Defended America. And it's the story of my life from the time I was a little kid to during and after January 6th.
Well, I wanted to get into just a little bit of kind of your origin story, how you got to be who you are, and how everybody knows of you. A lot of people do now. So, but before we do, let's trash Harry Dunn, shall we? Should we just...
my favorite subject. Can
we just take it on, and then we'll release those clips? What can you tell us about him that you think might be embarrassing that we could share? He took me out on a night in a town one time. I think he took me to like a black police officer bar. All of a sudden I walked in, I was like, I'm the only white non-police officer here. But
I bet you that didn't feel awkward, because I'm like, am I going to get beat up here? Or is this a friendly?
Well, what felt awkward is he demanded I sit on his lap the whole time. That was weird.
I wouldn't be surprised that he wouldn't ask you, because he did mention that he would do that.
He protected me very nice. He held me in his bosom. I felt very safe. The thing is with him is like he has long arms, so he wraps you around. Yes.
Even if you don't want a hug, he gives you a bear hug.
Yes. Yeah, he's also whispered in my ear, "Let it happen," which I felt unsafe.
The thing is, like, you don't have no choice but to accept. I'm like, I can't free myself from this giant individual.
How is serious question? How has your bond with him and your fellow, police officers who went through what you went through? What is that relationship? How has that just changed, or I would imagine gotten stronger as we bust each other's chops?
In terms of me and Harry, I've known him since 2008. So 14 years, almost 15. dealing with him, his lack of empathy towards me sometimes. He busts my chops just like as much as I do to him. I tell him that every single day that I work with him, he somehow managed to enhance my understanding and ability to be a better person one way or the other. I learned something from him, especially the last 2 years, by him becoming one of the first public officer who began to tell their stories about what happened on January 6th, and kind of like in a way getting like John Lewis used to say in good trouble. Mm-hmm. And I took that as a springboard to come forward myself. But other than that, like over the years, I know him. It's the same type of guy that 15, 14 years ago, he was the same guy. Very gracious, approachable, and a good fellow officer as well. But in terms of the other officers, our relationship, like in my case, I have been a person that doesn't get involved with all the things that is not concerning to me, or just like in terms of like bickering and gossiping, things like that. So sometimes I used to find out months later about something happening and like, oh, I didn't know that. But my relationship with them, I think is well. I think I have tried to represent the department in a way that is conducive to the overall goal, which is the welfare and safety of the officers, and to hold those accountable for what they did.
Yeah,
you're
doing everything you can to hold those accountable, including testifying, writing columns, speaking out every opportunity you get, and we're really grateful. How are you doing in terms of, a lot of people know your story at this point in terms of what happened since January 6th. You had forced into retirement. How do you deal with the emotional stuff? Do you talk to guys like Harry? Do you guys talk to each other? Who do you lean on? Do you talk to anybody? Therapists? Do you feel like you've got a good enough support? I mean, the whole country, it seems like, is supporting you, but I'm sure you feel alone at times.
Before I became public about it, like I knew right away that I wanted to speak about it. Probably like a week or 2 weeks after. But out of concern for my family and heeding my wife concerns,
yeah,
I kind of like kept it to myself. Right. But I told her, I don't know how long can I do that for. There was a lot of reservation in terms of making that decision, but ultimately I think I made the decision because my code of ethics, my upbringing, my military service, my oath of both in the military and in the Capitol didn't allow me to stay quiet in terms of the type of support that I have meant for mental health and whatnot. I have a good family support. I think without that particular support, especially my family, my wife, my son, and my closest relatives, I think I wouldn't have been here to tell you that story about what happened to me. And I see some of the things that perhaps with the right help, some of the officers that did die by suicide, that maybe that would have helped them if they had the support, both in terms of family or mental health assistant, which at that time it was non-assistant at the Capitol. I'm grateful that to have that type of support. I had gone through mental health therapy. I also had gotten thousands and thousands of letters and messages from the population, the U.S. population, including from around the world, about offering their support, thoughts and prayers and things like that.
You must be, I mean, you grew up your childhood in the Dominican Republic. What is friends and family back there? You go back there, you must be like a celebrity.
To be honest, I was there in December and hardly anybody noticed me, but my family. But since being receiving the Presidential Citizen Medal Award, the whole community in the Dominican Republic has gotten galvanized behind me, and a lot of them lately have been reaching out to find out my story. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be, last night I got invited to see and meet the president of the Dominican Republic next month.
Wow.
And they're going to present me with a proclamation.
Oh, that's great, man. That's great. Oh, yeah. Wow. What an unbelievable thing that is and will be. What about I asked you about your relationship with Harry and other officers and so on. What about your relationship with the actual people working in Congress, the congressmen and folks working in the Capitol? Because I know Nancy Pelosi, you were her guest at the State of the Union the other night. You were her special guest. And I have seen and heard so many other people, Congressman Raskin and others, honor you and be with you. Obviously, the President of the United States. So my question is, how has your relationship been with those members of Congress who see you, the way that most of us do, as a hero?
Well, it has grown, I guess, in a way, in a positive direction as compared to the other side, the other party, which they love me and they don't want nothing to do with me or any of the officers who continue to speak out and tell the truth about their experience and speak the truth. And I know it was a great honor being the guest for Speaker Pelosi. Jamie Raskin speak highly of me. My story is as an immigrant, as an Army veteran, as a police officer, as a human being, I have tried to maintain my character and behave without any reprimanding or reproach throughout my life. But I'm human. People make mistake or talk back, get angry sometimes. But I come to embrace some of those things because I did the right thing. I did the right thing on January 6th without feeling aligned to one political party or the other. Everything that I did was because it was my job to do. Before January 6th, I never thought about any politics or I'm going to protect this person this way because they're the way they vote for or their ideology. And because they believe what we did and what we went through was so traumatic, I welcome it. But if the other party says to me what I went through, hey, nothing happened, of course I'm not going to believe them. Of course I'm not going to want anything to do with. I'll tell you, one thing that I could tell you is that last year before the summer recess, I was walking around in the Capitol and on the Senate side, and in the basement by the Senate subway, there's a bank of elevators. There I ran into Lindsey Graham, and it was just me and him in that elevator. And that individual didn't muster the courage to say thank you or I'm sorry for what happened or how are you? And he knew who I was. I had the radio on it. I even responded on the radio, "This is Sergeant Gonell. I'm on my way to the second floor." Just so he could know that who I am. And what he did was he turned to his left and gave the back to me. So, and these are the same people that go on TV and say, we back the blue, we support law and order, the rule of law, and we got your back, or personal responsibility. But when they had the opportunity to do so, they don't. Publicly, they say all those things. except for when it comes to Capitol Police, because they don't.
Are there other? It's terrible to hear that. I think any American who had the opportunity to meet you most would say the same thing. Wow, I've heard your story. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for your service and so much more. You also, of course, are a combat veteran. There's a lot to talk about if someone meets you, and if you're someone who literally benefits from your protection, you think it would make so much more sense. And yet you hear that story about Lindsey Graham. Who else? I mean, are other congressmen? They just don't.
Before I left last year, and again, this is probably like September or August. I think it was September when they came back from recess, and also before they went on their summer vacation. Ran into Marjorie Taylor Greene. She bolted to the left to the women's bathroom. I ran into Kevin McCarthy. He bolted with his detail to the right. I ran into Ted Cruz. He made eye contact and then pretended to be doing something else. I ran into Senator Johnson. He tried to avoid me for some reason. Like, I'm not confrontational about it. I was just walking around doing my rounds. I'm in civilian clothes like I am now with the radio. That's it. I wasn't looking for confrontation. Or
did any of those people ever at any point?
The only persons from the Republican side that had come and talked to me and had approached me about it has been Liz Cheney and Ada Kinzinger. Wow. Out of all those members that I risked my life. And I'll give you another sample recently for the State of the Union, where I was sitting down on the second floor, and this is like 3 days ago. I'm in my chair, and I already had introduced myself to one seat away. And that guy, obviously, he thanked me for what I did. But the person that I was seated on my right, he was an older gentleman, a white guy, and he's there as a guest, just like I was. But I don't know who invited him. I never asked, nor did I care. I was there as a guest. And when Biden began to speak, that gentleman on my right, he began to say things like he lied or this, and that. And somehow the conversation that he was having with the other person next to me began to turn about January 6th and things like that. And myself and the other person 2 seats away from me, we already had talked briefly about that. I am so-and-so, Susan Gonell, was here January 6th. And the older gentleman began to deny some of those things and say, well, just like on January 6th. And he began to, once he found out who I was, then he asked me, he told me, I was here the week before January 6th and on the day before as well. And I saw all the officers that were there everywhere. Everywhere there were officers. I'm like, yes, we all were here working that day. But then he goes, well, how come on January 6th there was no officers? I'm like, excuse me? Yes, I saw on TV or people are telling me that there was no officers. I'm like, sir, with all due respect, I was here that day, and I could tell you that most of the officers that were available to work, they were here working. And the other gentleman that I had talked to was like, yes, he was here. Nobody told him about it. He lived it. He worked it.
Right.
And so there's no reason. And the gentleman, he continued to say, I know for a fact there was nobody here. I'm like, do you understand that I was here and I'm Sergeant Gonell? I almost lost my life. I had 2 surgeries. And when you have 20, 50,000 people attacking you, trying to breach the Capitol, of course you're going to see a small number of police officers because we are outnumbered. So it's not like we had people that didn't do what we were supposed to, or the officer were not there. We were just overwhelmed with so many things happening. And I told him, look, I almost lost my life. If that's not sufficient to you, then I don't know. I don't have nothing else to tell you. I'm here as a guest. So please stop talking to me, because if you don't believe what I'm telling you right now, then please stop. I'm here as a guest.
Do you know who it was?
I do not know.
Was it Bono from U2?
No. I wish I would have to ask him for his to score him out. but the thing is, the fact that he's doubting even the people who were there. Yeah. Myself, like I had the injuries, I had the scar, I had I can't imagine. I had the trauma, I had the pictures, I had the video.
It reminds me.
And then what occurred to me was like, because every time the other gentleman stand up to applaud Biden, blah, 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 for whatever reason, he told them, why you keep standing up for this guy?
God, we got to find out who this person was. I want to know.
And then I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, if you didn't, you know what you're going to go to a rally or to a event, that how's the event is going to be, then why are you there to begin with if you're going to be there uncomfortable about what somebody else is saying? So, but I never asked who he was with, and I didn't care. I at the end of after that conversation or interaction, I just sat on the front part of my seat and left him grumbling behind me.
I care. The audacity of that kind of behavior it's like, it reminds me of the astronaut Buzz Aldrin. You know, Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon and walked on the moon. And there's always been conspiracies that he never landed, that it never happened. So some guy came up and confronted Buzz Aldrin. He's like, you didn't land on the moon. I don't believe it. And Buzz Aldrin at like 85 just punched the guy right in his face. And it's like this, like he's same thing. He's telling you something didn't happen that happened to you. And it's just, that's the kind of arrogance and audacity I can't imagine someone.
It's not just from the public. I mean, I'll tell you this instance that a few months ago, I think it was over the summer, I was at a Costco near my house, and I ran into a former colleague of mine that I used to work at midnight. But I didn't recognize him right away because I haven't seen him in so long. And he had a full beard, so I didn't recognize him. And first he said, hey, Gonell, blah, blah. Shake my hand. He reach out. I shake his hand, blah. And we had kind of like a small chat, whatnot. And I greeted him. I told him, hey, how you doing? I'm doing good. I'm doing better. And after that initial conversation or interaction, he goes, are you going to start crying on TV? And I'm like, I was so shocked. Like, I didn't, you know what? Have a good day. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I know this guy from somewhere. I know him. And it turns out that he used to work with me on midnights.
He's a former Capitol Hill police officer.
He's a coroner officer. But I never confronted him again. And I just like, after I was in my car, I'm like, put one and two together. I'm like, that's where I know him
from. It.
But
wow.
I felt like I was with my family and I didn't want to cause a scene.
Understandable.
But I did feel like that person that you said that wanted to punch somebody in the face.
Oh,
was coming from a fellow officer that probably was not there on January 6th. Probably nothing happened to him. Probably he would have run or not do anything. Or responded as he should have had. Because when I did respond, I was willing to lose my life. I did what I did based on my belief that everything was on the line, including my safety, the safety of the people who I sworn oath to protect, or the future of the country.
I want to talk a little bit about your life and start with the fact that you grew up in another country and came here. I think you told me when you were 18?
12 years old.
Oh, you're 12. Okay.
Yeah, I was still a young baby.
Oh, got it. All right. So you have a pretty good perspective, certainly growing up. You came of age in the States. Where did your family move to?
We moved to New York, Brooklyn, New York.
Right.
And there, my first few years were rough in terms of adjusting the assimilation to a new culture, not knowing what this country was about, the racial disparity that we encounter, discrimination, poverty, winter. There's a lot of things that that I had to overcome, including family-wise, because my family was a little bit dysfunction at that time, but we kept it to ourselves, and we were resilient about it. Not knowing the language also didn't help in a productive way, because we had to just learn the basics just to survive, and pretty much we were on our own. Like nowadays, I look back and see and wonder, how did we overcome so much? Because at that age, I was already working at a bodega in some aspect of work, which nowadays is considered illegal. Right. And just to help out with rent and my family, back, not only here, but back home as well.
Wow. I can't imagine. Most Americans can't. Most people, that's why it's always the perspective of someone who's lived anywhere else is always worth more to someone than someone who grew up here, because you don't know anything else, which is always, we could talk about immigration issues and racism perhaps another time, but I definitely want to know, let's stay on your life. So when did you, I don't want to fast forward through a whole bunch of stuff. I'm sure you document it in your new book, which everybody should get, but when and why did you join the military, the United States Army?
I joined the military in 1999. I saw it as a way for me to not only pay for school, but also better myself in terms of not straying and get myself in trouble, because a lot of things were happening around me when I did that. And the typical career choices for Dominicans once you arrive or as an immigrant, in our case, Dominicans, is barber, a taxi driver, a bodega store owner, or a factory worker. And to me, not to say that those things were bad or are bad, but I saw myself as to I could do a lot better, have more potential than just doing that. And joining the military, I knew that would be a giant step forward for me not only to get an education, but also to help pay some of the things or as a way to pay back some of the opportunities that this country opened up for me. And I did that without even thinking about my own safety. I knew there was a possibility to end up going to war. At that time, 1999, there was I believe it was the Kosovo and war that was happening. And there was a possibility. When I was in training, I knew they were calling all soldiers to go overseas right away. And I signed the dotted line, so I knew there was a possibility. And in 2003, I managed to be deployed.
Where were you 9/11? Where were you?
In 9/11, I was actually at the Army base in Queens, 4,000 Queens. And I got to see the second plane on TV hitting the tower. That was a breathtaking. I knew what it meant. I knew that we somehow, whether immediately or down in the future, I would be deployed to call up to duty in terms of mobilization, because I was already there for 17 days straight trying to train and do some military drills and stuff like that I needed to do. I volunteered to go to Ground Zero. Some of my supervisors at that time said, no, we need you here, and begin calling your soldiers, the other soldiers, so they could report back. My MOS, military occupational skill, was personnel, but I was doing more than personnel. I was doing supply. I was doing things, doing things outside my scope of duty. And I was told, no, you cannot go there. After those initial 17 days of active duty that I was on orders for, I took a security class, and I applied for a job in Midtown Manhattan, and then they sent me back down to Ground Zero area, where I saw some of the. I was a block away from Ground Zero for 6 months. I did from September or October 2001 all the way to June 2002. I worked as a security guard. And at one point I said to myself, well, if I'm already doing security guard and I'm putting my life, risking my life, I might as well just become a police officer. At least I'll have something to fall back on, instead of just standing here with a walkie-talkie and hoping for the best.
Right. But then you eventually did deploy to Iraq.
Yes. 2003, I got the call. I didn't get the call. I got the orders because at that time I knew we were getting deployed because I was personnel. So I knew before a lot of the other soldiers did, that our number had come up. I just told my mom, hey, look, this is it. So there's no way around it. If I don't go, then I'll lose everything that I have been fighting for. I'll mess up my credit. I'll go AWOL, and I can't even get a job at McDonald's. So there I went. I said my goodbyes, and I ended up in Iraq for 1 year.
Tell me just a little bit. I know you write about it in the book, but tell me a little bit about your time there. What was your job? Who were you with, and where were you stationed? And what did you do and see? And
well, initially we were supposed to just stay in Kuwait as a supply unit, but then my understanding from back then, in my recollection, was that once we were supposed to replace the main unit of resupplying equipment in Kuwait. But then my commander, my captain, and my first sergeant, they began to volunteer a whole unit to go to Iraq. Yes, we could do it. Yes, we could do this and do that. Why not? So that changed our mission. Half of us went flying into Iraq, and half of them we were on convoys. I happened to be selected to go on flight, but the flight, they do maneuvers that you flying, and it's kind of like an evasive maneuver just in case somebody's shooting at you. So they land very aggressively, and that doing that pop everybody's ear, no matter whether you had earplugs or not. And that kind of messed up my ear for a week or two. But it's something minor compared to the other things that happened. In Iraq, you didn't know where was the front line because it wasn't an insurgency. It wasn't a traditional battlefield. Army against army. It was just like people just throwing, lobbing bombs and rockets and mortars at us, and then running away from things. So even inside a base where it will be considered safe it wasn't safe because a lot of things happened there. I almost died with some of the explosions. But some of the things, the positive that I could tell you that I tried to do, look at the positive things that we were doing in terms of helping the Iraqis in the best way that I could and that we could, which is taking supplies to win hearts and minds to local populations, school supplies, food, medicine, things like that. Luckily, my unit, we didn't sustain any loss of life, but doesn't mean that we did not come close to, because we did. And that whole year that we spent there, that was very traumatic, just not only for myself, but for our family as well, because by then 9/11 had passed 2 years, and people, well, a great amount of the population of the United States had believed that Iraq didn't have nothing to do with 9/11. And George Bush and Colin Powell, Dick Cheney, for political game or a score to settle with his father never completed the job or not, then they decided to go into Iraq. So by the time I got deployed, there was a lot of
controversy
around the whole war. Yeah. It wasn't worth it. Do we need to be there? And I felt like only the people who were deployed were the one that were invested in
no doubt about it. I mean, I used to
surviving it. Yeah, because it had turned into a quagmire, endless war for no reason. Because you even have people that never served criticizing what we were doing there, and only the officer, the soldiers who were there, we were the only one who had something invested in, and that was our lives.
And after your return home, how much of your experience in Iraq stayed with you? Did you deal with any serious emotional issues?
Yeah. I dealt. Upon my return, I had one semester left from college, and that was kind of like took 2 months off, and then I took as many classes as I could to finish that. But I began to deal with PTSD, isolating myself from a lot of things, family, being more cautious about it. But I dealt with it on my own. I didn't seek help. And when I did seek help with the VA, then they said, no, you're good to go. That nothing happened to you. So that was kind of like a shock that, here we are, we're putting our life on the line, and we are promised to being taken care of. And if I do come back, then you're telling me, no, whatever you had, that's because you had it before the Army, or that had nothing to do with your service. So that was kind of like disappointing, and I had a long battle throughout the years to make them correct that, because they don't believe that something happened. In one particular case is that my PTSD from the Army, it begins with an explosion, and then they tell me, yes, for your PTSD, this explosion happened. The VA tells me that yes, it happened, but then for your ear condition, then nothing happened. I'm like, how can you say it happened on this one, but not on this one? When everything's related, there was an explosion, I was exposed to the explosion. So I only get PTSD, but not hearing things. So that was kind of like awkward. And for 15 years, I've been fighting them, and hopefully soon
Wow, you're still fighting. You're still fighting. That's crazy, and a crazy story. And I've heard it so many times from your generation of veterans. What brought you to? I mean, I could talk to you about your time in Iraq and post-Iraq for a long time, but just getting to D.C. and the Capitol Police Force. How did you get there? I know I'm forgetting now, but at what point did you get your citizenship and how?
Oh, I was about to tell you that, and I'd be off topic. My mom, she was the first one to become a USA citizen, so that kind of like opened up. I helped her with the process, and then I'm like, she was like, "Sorry, you couldn't get it because you're older now. You know, they only give you like if you were 20, 21 and below 21, 20 and below. That's when you could get it through your parents if they become."
Got it. Right. Okay. So
by then I was 20, 21, 22, something like that. So I didn't qualify. So later on, before going to Iraq, that's when I got it. And the first time that I got to use my voting right, that was in Iraq, surprisingly.
Oh, wow.
So here I am in the middle of the war, not even being able to vote. And now I get to exercise that. I'm in a war that, as an immigrant, as a naturalized citizen, I never voted before, but here I get my first chance there. And I voted against George Bush because I didn't believe at that time, like we should have had not been in Iraq.
You voted for John Kerry at that time.
Yeah, I think my philosophy was the people who attacked us was in Afghanistan,
right?
And therefore we took off our eyes off the ball. We could have finished the job and it would be in a better position overall. But those are decisions made by the commander in chief, and I follow the orders no matter who was on top. So
I feel like there was a proposal for a law. I feel like there should be a law that if you join the United States military or even work in the United States government for, I don't know, a certain amount of time, whatever's reasonable, because you don't want to just join, get citizenship, and quit or something. But like once you serve a certain amount of time, and certainly if you serve any time in combat, anytime, I would think that yes, you're the best person to make a citizen. And we should make that as easy as possible. But I don't know the laws around that or what the case is. But yeah, I would.
Well, I could tell you my experience. Upon my return from Iraq, back then it used to be American Online chatting and all that. It was very messy and very new to everybody. And I remember when I came back, I bought a Mac computer, one of the big ones, big screen back then. And here I am chatting one day with somebody, and that whole team that you just mentioned about getting the citizenship if you were in service is not automatic because I learned when I joined the military, one of the things that my recruiter supervisor asked me, are you a U.S. citizen? I said, no. And he took my application, and on the bottom of it, he put, in order, just so you are aware, if you want to continue your military career after 8 years, you must become a U.S. citizen. So it's not automatically. And when I came back, that person online that I was chatting with, she made the argument that, well, you have to go through the process. If not, you get it after you, when you come back. And I said, well, what if you die in the war? And I don't know if she meant it sarcastically or not, but she said, well, we can always get it after you die. I forgot the name, how you say
I pronounced that one. I read that word once and pronounced it wrong on live radio. I said posthumously, but it's Posthumously is how it's pronounced. Yes, but it doesn't matter. I still completely embarrass myself. But yeah, so anyway, to your point, you get it posthumously if that's
exactly. And I say I butcher up the word. That's why I ask you how you say it.
Yeah.
And I was like, what good is that going to do to that family or to the soldier who volunteered to go to a war for another country that is not his? And you're going to say, well, he could get the citizenship now, but for what? He's already gone.
The benefit,
his family. And the thing is, like, yes, they will get it. That soldier will get it, but the family's not getting any benefit out of that.
Right?
He won't. The family will not get citizenship from extended citizenship from that, or any other benefits other than if he did not sign up for the insurance, the 200,000 insurance that they had at that time, or the 400,000. He won't get it. They won't get it.
Right.
So I'm like, in no way would that be any benefit to that person who was an immigrant and joined just to 8 years, because we had to do 8 years, regardless of the contract. You had to do 8 years. And to me, that was kind of like shocking that she was insinuating, well, he always get it. Like, sure. He would benefit from that, from the grave? Of course, yes. So I was being sarcastic about it. And I'm like, no, how about you go overseas and then tell me whether that's worth it? Because you yourself are not willing to do that. But here you have immigrants like myself willing to do that even before being a U.S. citizen.
It's a really important issue. I'm glad that you shared, your experience with it to tell people what it's like. And I'm not sure how much those laws have changed, but we're not luckily in those conflicts anymore. But who knows what the future holds for sure. What about how do you end up in D.C. on the Capitol Police Force?
Well, I have at that time after I graduated from college, I had a lot of influence, family, friends that were police officers. And that kind of like piqued my interest about it. I'll be talking more about all these things in my book in a more detailed way, with a sample, names and things like that. That led me to that decision. But I think coming back from Iraq, it allowed me to make an easier transition to becoming a police officer. I was already in the service as a public servant, so I found that it would have been easier for me to do that, despite not being my first choice of work. But I did see it as an opportunity, so I took it.
How long were you on the Capitol Hill Police?
Well, I just got separated in December 17 of last year. Not because I wanted to, but because the injuries that I sustained. So I was separated under medical retirement, disability. And I spent 16 years and a half.
16 and a half years. How would you generalize what you had to deal with on a regular basis? Were there a lot of issues that you had to respond to? Were most things fairly quiet? I mean, how often did you guys have to really deal with serious threats, conflicts?
Every day is different. Every day is different. At the Capitol, you always have arrivals, protests, departures, First Amendment, assembly, permitted things like that. So I know when I came back from Iraq, there was a lot of protests against the war, and I just happened to be a rookie at the Capitol, and here I am protecting the people who are demonstrating against the war, which I just happened to come back from.
Wow.
So that was kind of like eerie in my mind, because I'm like, okay, if I wasn't a police officer, I would have been with them too. So that was kind of weird.
Huh.
But nevertheless, I did my job. I continue doing what I was supposed to do. Over the years, I worked thousands and thousands of First Amendment protected First Amendment protests and assembly. I never in my life had been assaulted at work on any particular form or besides training from my fellow officer, but that was for training, not because John Doe from across the country decided to attack a police officer in full uniform. So it's not like they didn't know who I was or things like that. But overall, my experience with the Capitol Police has been, with the exception of the last 2 years, I love my job. I worked a lot of overtime. I worked a lot of events with protecting dignitaries, celebrities, elected officials, and the public, regular John Doe citizens who come from across all across the country and from all across of life, from different countries, and they were so surprised that of the whole process of openness and access to the Capitol that they will often ask me, "Can I get closer to the building?" I'm like, "Sure, it's open.
Yeah.
Go ahead. All you gotta do is get in line, and you'll be able to get a tour if you want to." Because in some of these countries, other countries, they don't get to see their capital where lawmakers are ruling and doing certain things in the open like that.
Yeah, it's really transparent and accessible, even post 9/11, of course. But I think it's worth always mentioning that on January 6th, the Capitol, like everywhere else, was closed because of COVID. So it's like you couldn't access it the way you could pre-COVID for obvious reasons. So worth mentioning there. But you've talked, I've heard you talk about, and you've written about it, and of course you've testified in front of the country in Congress in the hearing, that what you experienced on January 6th was far worse than anything you ever experienced as a police officer those previous 15 years, and worse than anything you'd experienced during your time serving in combat in the United States Army in Iraq. Do I have that right?
Yes, and I explain a lot of those differences in my upcoming book, American Shield. But what I mean is not so much the danger that we encounter, that I encounter in Iraq, because I knew what I was getting into in the wars, or anything could happen. But what I mean is that on January 6th, you have a horde of people, American citizens, that believe something that happened that never did happen.
Right.
And you have people individually attacking me, or people simultaneously, multiple people attacking me at the same time. And not only attacking me as a person, but as a police officer in full uniform. And then they tell me, "I'm doing this for you." Like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you serious? You telling me that you attacking me because I want you to attack me? Let me get this straight. And this is like a back and forth as they attacking me to the point of exhaustion from their part. Like, if you look at the tunnel where I was, there are about 2 or 3 moments that after a certain amount of time, you see the officers just pausing like this, like kind of like winded, and them themselves, the mob. And at that moment, we were like 30 to 40 officers, or 60. It's between those numbers. And we are holding down this entrance where we believe is the only entrance, the only breach in the whole Capitol, because we didn't know. Whoever was in there in that tunnel, we did not know that there were other breaches around the Capitol. We knew that we had to defend the Capitol, And this is it. This is the entrance where they were making their breach. And you had officers and riders exhausted, including myself, because most of the time I was in the front line where we both group met. And when we paused, we're like, thank God we paused. We stopped, at least for a few seconds or a minute. But then we could not rotate the injured. We could not rotate because we were tired. But they did, the riders. They could rotate themselves. So when the first 20 people got tired of beating the crap out of us, then 20 more would come back to the front. And it was on and on and on and on for more than three hours. To the point that I sustained injuries on both my hands, my right foot, and my left shoulder. And not many people know that Michael Fanone relieved me that day. And I feel guilty because of what happened to him, because he literally took my spot. And when I went back to the line to do something, by the time I returned, he was already gone into the crowd that he has been pulled. It's a moment that still haunt me. Ken and I, we talk about it, and he grabbed me by the head and said, "Son Gonell, I'll forgive you." But I told him, I'm like, look, this is one of those things that you feel guilty. You had the survival guiltiness. Despite the fact that I already had been injured, already being beaten, already being,
right.
Both my hands were bleeding. And I don't know if he had not taken my spot, I don't know if I would have survived, because he sustained heart attack, he sustained punches, he sustained multiple injuries. And when that happened to him, I was already beat up. So God knows what would happen. And I feel for that guy. I feel that I should have stayed there, even if it was a few more minutes. And that's only one incident. There were other moments that, like Hodges, I was two officers behind him when he was getting trampled, and I'm getting myself trampled. And I could feel my family members calling me, my phone vibrating, and I couldn't do anything to answer. I couldn't do anything for Hodges or myself. Before that, there was another officer that he got hurt. He was one of the first one hurt in there. He got concussed and be taken out. He was one of my squad. And I asked him, I think it was last year, do you remember this? And he said, no, I don't remember. I don't remember. So that trauma that he probably has is that he blocked it or he doesn't remember because of what happened to him. But I knew I had to, with his situation, not only was I worried about the crowd in front of me beating the crap out of us, but I also worried about him because I could see that when I looked to his left, to my left, towards him, and I kept asking him, "Are you okay?" So and so, and all I could see is the whiteness of his eyes, and he's scared. Not because he wasn't doing what he needed to do, but because he was getting his ass whooped. So it's a lot of things that people don't know, and I try to put some of them in the book. Hopefully, people read it. Hopefully, people pay attention to what it was. It was no hugs and kisses or a tour or a love fest like the former guy continued to downplay, because if this happened in his house, I'm sure he will want some type of accountability.
I'll let you go and we'll talk again. I'd love to have you join us as a group. Listeners get together like every Thursday night. We have this awesome, we'd love to have you stop by and hang out with us. But I just want to ask you right now, and we'll pick up again soon, I hope. How do you feel about the accountability that we have seen? Obviously, hundreds of people that were insurrectionists that day have been arrested. But from what I can tell, you and many others do not feel anywhere close to satisfied that the accountability threshold has been met, that there has not been enough accountability for the leaders, for the more powerful people. How do you feel about what's been done in terms of the investigation and in terms of accountability up until now?
Well, one of the hardest thing that I think it bothers me the most is the moral injuries. Like, I did everything what I was supposed to. I did my job. I kept my oath, and I risked my life for what I signed up for. And when you have the very same people who I risked my life for now saying, gee, nothing happened. These were my friends. It was a bar fight and the guy out of hand, or love fest or tour, or whatever you want to connotation BS that they use to excuse their behavior.
Yeah.
That it feels like a betrayal, because me as a person that I risked my life in the army and I risked my life in the Capitol on a daily basis, but mostly more on January 6th. And as an immigrant, that when I was growing up in the Dominican Republic, I used to hear America is the land of opportunity where everybody's get treated the same, the rule of law, the American values, democracy, law and order, such and such and such. And you hear that from the elected officials only when it's convenient to them, or when they apply certain things to a particular group.
Right.
Because when you hear Mitch McConnell telling his senator caucus or his party in the Senate saying, do me a favor and vote against the bipartisan investigation that was trying to be set up. Really? Really? You're asking for political favor, preventing investigation, 9/11 style, because you don't like the outcome, or you won't like what you hear that most of your party were involved or were complicit in some of the things that led to or took part of, then you're going to ask for a political party. But then you go on TV and say such and such person is responsible for it and he should be held accountable in court, but not for an impeachment because he's on his way out of the presidency. So you shouldn't hold him accountable for it. And then when he gets out of the presidency, well, you can because he already left. And later on, a couple of months later, they ask him, will you support him if he becomes the nominee? Of course I would. So that means you're going to make him come back to power then to hold him accountable, or you're going to make up another BS excuse not to hold him accountable.
Right.
And I risked my life for these people. And on January 6th, they were running for their lives. As everybody know now about Josh Hawley doing his little, as microphone call him bitch ass running.
That's right.
Things. And these are the same people who I risked my life for, that are saying nothing happened or it wasn't that bad. It was like Mike Pence, a couple of last year, I think he said, people I saw hang up in that one day. Well, that one day almost cost my life. That one day cost me my career. That one day cost my peace financially, physically, emotionally. And for him, that was just one day. For me, has been a January 6th almost every day. I just left the department in December 17 because the injury of that one day.
Right.
And he made it to safety because what we did but not because of the lack of the writers trying not to get to him, because they wanted to hang him in front of his wife, in front of his kid. And then you had the nuclear codes with him while they were ransacking the Senate in the House chamber and putting everything online. If that's not a national security, then what is? The guy, your boss, sent people to kill you. Do you realize that some people, your boss, sent people to kill you because you wouldn't do what he wanted you to do?
Right.
And you say, "Oh, well, we don't see eye to eye, but he's a friend. He's good. We accomplish a lot." I get it. You try to be a Christian person, a religious, but God bless your soul. God bless your soul.
Well said. Well said. Do you think there will be accountability for Donald Trump or any of the other kind of leaders and architects, or those who, deny us?
I'm sorry, I don't think I answered your question before. Well, sorry. Do I think some of these charges are lenient? Yes. Some of the sentencing that the people have received, they are very lenient. Some of these people, they go to the judge and ask for leniency, or they say, well, I got caught up in the moment, or it was just one time that I acted out of character, or I never done this before. Gee, neither did I. I never experienced another insurrection. I never got my ass beat by almost 40 people different time in one day. And when I tell you that Iraq in January 6th was different, that's the difference. I got attacked by multiple people at the same time, where I almost died multiple times in the same day in the span of 3 or 4 hours. And it was one thing after another, one thing after another. And this person got tired of beating me, and somebody else come and kick my ass again. Even if I'm bleeding, even if I'm telling them to go back, even if I'm trying to help themselves, because there were moments where I'm trying to help people that they are hurt among their own group, and we are trying to help, and they beat us up.
Yeah.
Even as we're trying to help them. And accountability for me, there have been a few individuals that had attacked me, and they had gotten 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. But that's only probably like 4 or 5 people out of probably 50 people that I recognize that had attacked me in videos. There's still a lot of suspects that I know who attacked me, but the FBI had not identified them. They had not called me to testify. I left the department, but I know this thing is it's not over for me, because I'm still involved legally in some of these investigations.
Sure.
Whether I like it or not, I'm going to be. It's a long process. That one day, like Mr. Pence says, it's still haunting me. It's still bothering me that it's been 2 years and I'm still dealing with some of these things. I left the department because what they did was, I had 7 years left for my mandatory retirement. And that was, I had a career. I took the test for lieutenant. I passed it. And because I couldn't return to my previous position, I cannot fulfill that. So I lost another steps into my career that had January 2nd not happened, I would be minding my own business. I would stay quiet. I would still protect the Capitol and the people who work there, regardless of who running the Congress or the Senate. But now you have the people who, some of the very same people who took part on January 6th, people who were there attacking the officers and breaching the Capitol, now they are elected official at the Capitol. Think about it. Think about it, how some of the Republican people that say accountability matters, the rule of law and order, personal responsibility. When you have people who attack the Capitol, they attack the Capitol and they get rewarded with an elected position in Congress and in the Senate. That tells you that they do not back the blue. They do not back the police officer, because every single time they are asked, they say, well, that was horrible, but let's not do nothing about it.
Right.
They only want to apply certain things, or they only want to address certain issues when it's a group that they particularly don't like. Because in my case, on January 6th, had it been a group of Arabs or somebody, an enemy that we had, or known group as a terrorist, of course I would have had not hesitated about using my lethal arm weapon. But because these are our own citizens, both any race and color, because there were a lot of different people, but the majority were white. Now, doesn't mean that I was not justifiably willing to use, because I almost did use my. I
was going to ask you about that. I haven't heard you or other. I'm sure you've been asked about it. It's a tough question, but like, why, if you're on the ground being beaten and thinking, certainly as Fanone and you and others thought, I might die here, why not take your pistol out and shoot someone?
It wouldn't make a difference. Because I'll tell you why. Because how many people were there on the mall? 20,000. How many of them have been, or more? How many or more of them were screened for weapons? None.
Were you told by your superiors, under no circumstances do you pull your weapon because it's going to make things worse?
We did not. I think the whole force, individually, yet collectively in the overall, we made the decision not to use it because we were overwhelmed. We felt like, I know in my case, I felt like it wouldn't have made a difference. I almost did when I got hurt, when I got injured. And I made the point of making an effort to, when I was being dragged or trying to be pulled into the crowd, let me hit him one more time. And if he doesn't release me, then I'm going to transition to my service weapon. But then what next?
Right.
Because after that, there was nothing else for me to
Then they get your service weapon and shoot you with it. I think I heard Fanone say that. Like he was worried, or they took his gun. He thought they were going to kill him with his own gun, which is
exactly.
Horrible.
So after you deploy your service weapon, there's no other way to escalate or de-escalate.
Right. Yeah. No.
What else? Okay, I got 15 bullets in my weapon. Then what? They're going to pry it from me. I was literally, you talking about less than 3 feet. So am I gonna pull it and then
you couldn't just be like, it's not, John Wick is not real. You couldn't just like walk through and
I wish it was that case. I wish the case, because time slows down. I got plenty of time to think. Am I going to shoot this guy? He got his hand up, but then he hit me and come back. And
it's not real.
He's not legit target, or my aiming is really good, but with all the stress, I may miss and hit the kid that the father thinks is a good idea to bring him to an interaction, to educate him.
Yeah.
So, but to be serious, I think it wouldn't have made any difference if I did or not.
Well, it could have very potentially made things a lot worse, and you just illustrated why.
And that in terms of things in our favor, it wouldn't have made a difference, but it would have made things a lot more volatile, because we don't know what type of weapon those people were bringing in, not only in their person, but in the backpacks, because most of them, they did have backpacks. And one thing that people could conflate is, and I'm sorry, I don't think I think I alluded to it earlier, during the summer protests for Eric Garner and all the
Black Lives Matter protests. Yeah.
People say, well, how come you guys didn't do anything on that when they were attacking Portland? Guess what? I was not in Portland. So how am I supposed to help with that? Plus, when that happened in Portland, Minnesota, they were not attacking the Capitol. They could have taken Portland, Minnesota, overall, burned to the ground, and that would not take or threaten the self-governance system that we have. On January 6th, you got legitimately every member of Congress and the Senate being a target, including the Vice President, the Senate Pro Tem, the Speaker of the House. These are the next three people in line to the succession of the presidency.
Yeah.
And the nuclear codes.
Yeah.
And the only person that wanted us to begin a massacre between ourselves, it probably was Michael Flynn and Donald Trump, because that would make him able to declare martial law and stay in power. So it was not feasible in terms of like, when people say, well, how come if it was another group, you guys would have shot them? If they are known enemies, yes, we would, but not to the point of us opening fire bluntly against regular civilians. I worked the Brett Kavanaugh demonstration. We didn't open fire there. Most of the people protesting that were of color. Same thing with Black Lives Matter. When they went to the Capitol, yes, they yelled, screamed, calling me pig or cops or bastards. I put one aside and told him, look, how come why are you bundling me up with this particular bad apples of police officers? And, well, you guys are all the same, blah, blah, blah. Okay, will you like me to call you a thug or the N-word? Oh, no. I don't like that. You categorizing me as it's the same paintbrush that you painted me.
It's thoughtful that
was my fault that in Minnesota, this guy killed somebody.
Well, I mean, it's a ridiculous comparison, because the people that were protesting in Portland and in Minneapolis were protesting for a real thing, the civil rights movement of their time. They were protesting against police brutality, police abuse, injustice. The people in Washington were protesting, as you said earlier, about a thing that did not happen.
Exactly. But what I was trying to get to him is like, don't paint me with the same brush.
Well, yeah, but it's very thoughtful and shows your character that you would be at this demonstration and that you would try to reason with a protester while in uniform. I mean, I think that's a really thoughtful thing.
Well, if you look at it now that you mentioned that, in the tunnel, when I was getting trampled, here I am trying to reason with a young lady. And I told her, she's saying, I can't breathe. And you see this crooked finger? In the video, my hand goes up. That's me trying to get her fellow riders stop pushing her, because she's claiming I can't breathe.
Right.
She's screaming, I cannot breathe. I can't breathe. And here I am like, look, you cannot come through here. There's a conversation in the middle of the whole thing. You cannot come through here. You need to go back that way. And after 3-4 minutes, what it feels like that I remember, it might be more or less. She leaves, and all those riders take her spot.
Right.
And then moments later, she come back to the front of the line, and I said to her, I don't know if it is in video or not, but I know I remember this because I told her, like, aren't you the same person who was claiming that you couldn't breathe a few moments ago? And guess what she said? She said, keep pushing, telling her fellow riders, keep pushing.
That is crazy. That's a crazy story. I've never heard that one, but I'm glad that you you shared that and everything else, man.
I heard that she finally got arrested about.
Oh, really?
After 2 years, she finally got arrested about 2 weeks ago.
Listen, man, let's talk again soon. I really appreciate this, all your time, your service. Congratulations on the recognition that you got. Good luck on the continued journey. And we're all really grateful to have you as an American, continuing to talk, doing all the work that you're doing. I'm super excited for your book. And we'll talk again soon, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I hope I answered your question about what accountability means. It means that somebody going to jail for what they did. And
certainly did.
Whoever it is, I hope they get what is coming to them, because nobody should be treated the same, not the same as everybody else.
Right. Well said, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. An hour, 20 minutes with American hero who has just an amazing story, Sergeant Aquilino Gonell. Please go hit him up on Twitter and check out his book. Get ready to pre-order his book. Again, on Twitter at Sergeant AQGO. I'm glad I got this up here on Friday. Thank you for all of your support. Sign up for a paid subscription right now, and hopefully you can join us all together, and hopefully Aquilino will join us himself next Thursday night at our hangout, and we will talk then. And have a great weekend. And I'll talk to you Monday if you're listening to this on Friday. If you're listening to it some other day, well, then I don't know what to tell you. Really don't know what to say other than Bumblebee. For those of you who listened all the way to the end, that's the key word. That's the shout out. That's my way of showing you things. Love you guys. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.
To let in some light, you gotta stand